Alright guys, welcome back. So episode number 2 in what is coming together as our mini-series on wedges, wedge selection, all the variables, shafts. So today we're going to focus on bounce specifically.
Very misunderstood kind of topic, I think, generally speaking.
Yeah, how to choose it. What even is bounce?
Exactly.
A lot of people ask me all the time, actually, do you know, I don't even know what bounce is. I don't know, I just know there's sort of higher bounces, lower bounces. Cleveland has their 1-dot system, 2-dot, 3-dot system, all that sort of thing. So, I think today what I wanted to kind of touch on is why you would select more bounce, why you'd select less bounce, the type of players that are going to, choose one over the other. And really, let's test what they all do.
Yep, and based on different turf conditions as well.
Exactly. So that's the key to this one is, if we were hitting all these shots off one surface, it would probably show one club as the winner.
Correct.
But then if we flip into another surface, probably a different wedge is going to be the winner. So that's the reality of the decision for you guys is picking the right wedge for the turf conditions you play on the most. Right?
Most commonly, yeah.
Most commonly. Now, you're going to play in different courses. You might play in links sometimes, then go and play a parkland course, and the turf conditions are softer. That's going to happen.
But if you're going to go to Scotland once every 10 years, you probably shouldn't have a set of wedges that's good for the links if you play on a parkland course 99% of the time.
Right,
So
exactly.
part of that conversation and fitting is what's serving you, when you play golf
for sure
regularly.
Exactly.
So bounce, just in case, and I'm sure there's lots of people who don't quite understand what it means.
Sure.
Am I correct in saying that it's the angle between the leading edge and the trailing edge of the club?
And the high point.
The high point.
Yeah, the highest point on the sole.
Right, gotcha.
So if you kind of flip that wedge around, you'll see that there's a point at which the sole, somewhere towards the middle back end of the sole, sits below the leading edge of the club.
Right.
So the measurement of how low that is the measured degree of bounce.
So something with a straight edge here, something with a lot of bounce, you'd see kind of this relationship.
Yes.
Where there's quite a high angle, and low bounce has a low angle.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly. Okay. And a lot of people will know that, and some might not.
Just for general kind of knowledge to start with.
But the reality is bounce has become sort of a useless number because there are so many elements into sole design and how you would pick a specific wedge. You will look at the sole width, you'll look at the sole radius, the sole camber. You'll look at the bounce number. You'll look at the actual grind and the shaping of it. So there's 5 key elements into what actually comprises the sole of a golf club on a wedge.
Interesting.
So you have to be mindful of all 5 to pick the right wedge for someone.
Right. So when someone hears the term like effective bounce, for example,
bounce,
that's the number that matters. Because if you take a bunch of this trailing edge off.
Yeah.
Maybe the bounce angle is different than what you'd see. Because someone might look at this and say, oh, there's a grind here, that must be low bounce.
Right.
But we know this is a mid-bounce wedge.
That's a mid-bounce wedge, exactly.
So it's the effective bounce is what you're looking for.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've picked 3 degrees of bounce, 6 degrees of bounce, 10 degrees of bounce, and they're all very different. I mean,
different.
We've got a 3-degree bounce wedge, which most people will be like, I've never even heard 3 degrees.
Never seen that myself, no.
Titleist have always had, their lowest bounce has always been 4, so 3 is the lowest I've ever worked with.
Wow.
And you can kind of see the shaping, how different it is. So, that high spot is very close to the front of the wedge. So this is already telling me this is going to lend itself to people who like to lay the wedge wide open, and lay it back. So, that high spot is further forward, so it doesn't raise the leading edge up too much. So
that's quite an extreme, I guess, example, being that low in bounce.
Definitely. So something in the mid-range, so you can see that high spot further back. So there's still a little bit of sort of camber.
Can see that,
to that until it gets to the high spot. So again, this would be probably your most multifunctional sole for the most players out there.
Something between 6 and 9 degrees of bounce. Yeah. We call mid, I guess.
I mean, you probably would change it depending on the loft.
True.
So.
Oh yes, of course, right. Sorry, on a 60 degree is what we're talking about.
On a 60. So 3 or 4 would be extremely low.
Right.
6 to 8 would be mid.
Yep.
10 to 12, 14 would be extremely high.
Right.
Okay.
Interesting. And so our highest one we're going to try is 10 degrees of bounce
10
in
on
the
this
60.
one. Yeah.
So one obviously more of a specialty, and we'll talk about why that is and who it might be suitable for. People will be familiar with kind of this is more extreme, but the high toe design from TaylorMade is kind of like that low bounce sort of deal, I guess.
It plays that way, Matty, but if you actually, again, this whole kind of effective bounce idea that we're introducing to people today, the high toe, if you go on there's quite a lot of measured bounce on there.
So it's just the perception of how it looks.
It's how it plays. It actually plays like quite a low bounce. It's just the way the grind is on there. Actually has a little bit of a low spot in the middle of it. The Phil Mickelson grind has the same sort of thing. So, it's kind of got high spot on the leading edge, high spot on the trailing edge, and it dips down in the middle to get minimal turf interaction.
Gotcha.
So they're all unique and different.
Okay, so let's start. You want to start with the high bounce option?
Let's start with this one.
Okay.
So we're going to hit a 40. We're going to standardise the length of it, Matty. Go 40 yards.
40 yards.
Let's kind of get some baseline numbers with a high bounce.
And so we're starting with, we've got a custom wedge board. People ask about this quite a bit.
Yep.
You're starting with the section of turf that simulates, I guess, a fairly soft lie.
Pretty soft, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would be kind of a nice, approach on a nice parkland course.
Yep. Okay. Struck that pretty well.
Struck that lovely. So just to get some baseline numbers, based on last week, people maybe remember we were talking about 30 degrees. Remember last week your launch number was 29?
We were using 54 last week, but we were hitting a longer shot, to be fair. Yeah. So that's the number we're going to look at, around 32-ish with this loft.
Should still be about 30. Now, we might find that number goes up a bit because the turf conditions are softer.
Gotcha. Okay.
That will actually dictate some of the launch and spin differences.
Interesting. Okay.
Again,
a little more of a thump on
lovely
that.
strike.
Yeah, a little bit more into the turf on that one, but similar result.
Very similar launch, Matty. 32.7, 32.8.
Interesting. Just lost some spin.
Lost some spin a little bit.
Was good too. Picked that one a lot cleaner. I didn't feel as much turf on that shot.
Okay. Hit one more.
Okay.
Nice.
That's the best one so far. I think that's the most
felt
evenly struck, like a bit of a divot, but not too much.
It's good. Very consistent. All right, let's switch it out. $60.06. Okay.
Delayed reaction. Should be good.
Yeah, that's nice. Every time you hit a perfect one, it's literally
the best ones hit that thing, don't they?
It's dead on that. Nice.
Good.
Awfully nice. Go in. Nice as well.
I want to say that this particular shot seems easier with less bounce.
Certainly looks that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Look at the launch coming down, the spin going up now.
Interesting.
That was nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. I guess less of the sole interacting with that firm turf.
Mm-hmm.
You're physically feeling less bounce, I guess.
Biggest difference so far is between these two.
Huh.
400 more spin, 3 degrees launch difference for the same basically the same pitch shot. That's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
That was lovely.
That's good, yeah.
That was one of your nicer ones, eh?
Yeah. No, you're right though. Look at the spin numbers. They feel good, but they're spinning less.
Look at that.
That's wild. It's like a perfect incremental thing too, isn't it?
Yeah. That
That's
sounded
nice.
really nice.
That had some zip. That should be quite good.
Go
Hit
ahead.
it.
Oh.
A little bouncy.
Close.
It was
Well,
close.
a little higher launch, less spin, do you think?
I think so.
It's nice though.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, good job. That was pretty interesting.
It was very.
How did that go? Kind of how you expected?
I think it
know
did.
what I thought was going to happen, but
Yeah, I definitely found it easy to identify the feeling between different bounce wedges on the firm turf.
that's where you would be exposed the most. I
Really,
think,
yeah. So when it was on the really tight lie, the higher bounce wedges were definitely harder to get, like what felt like a good clean strike. We did our best to kind of get 3 really good shots on each surface with each wedge, so the data was good. And I think it just took longer to get 3 good ones out of the higher bounce on the tight lie.
Right.
Now that being said, off the softer lie, it felt relatively easy to get through there, and that's quite a soft surface, so not the most forgiving. It's definitely an interesting test. I didn't expect to see the kind of spin differences that kind of you were talking to as I was hitting, based on I guess where the ball is being contacted on the club.
Well, we're looking at 600 RPMs of difference in spin between the kind of high bounce and the low bounce, with the low bounce being much less.
Right.
Which is interesting.
So that's on the soft turf. So talk to me, you mentioned I was hitting, you had an interesting take on why that happened. So I've got less bounce, I'm hitting on soft ground.
Yep.
Theoretically, the club is getting deeper in the turf because it's got less bounce.
Correct.
And the ball is contacting higher on the face.
You would certainly
think.
you would think that would happen. So
Right.
with the bounce providing enough resistance to the ground, we'll get it in and out that strike point as fast as possible, and it will not allow the club to sink down as much. Therefore, the strike being a little bit on the lower side with the higher bounce. Then with the low bounce, definitely we're going to see the strike a little bit higher as the club is allowed to sink deeper into the turf.
And so the general result from that on a wedge would be a little bit less ball speed, you would think, from this part of the face, and a little bit higher launch, a little bit less spin. Which is basically what happened.
Yeah, certainly with the less
so
spin.
much, but certainly the spin rating. So the launch is, it's hard to say just because they sit so differently, the wedges. We tried to make identical golf swings as much as I could, but maybe the face was a bit different in terms of face angle. But we definitely got way more spin from the club that kept the contact point more centered.
It was way different, and I think, guys, that's what we'll see from most people who play in softer conditions. You want to have a little bit of bounce in order to sort of get through that soft turf, rather than something that's going to take a divot or really kind of cut into the turf so much that it kind of absorbs all your club head speed. We want to get that club in and out the turf as much as possible. There was some really fascinating wedge shots from Tony Romo this week. He hit some crazy ones. He hit some really interesting ones. He hit one from like a hospitality tent.
He did, yeah.
Off the barest of bare lies, and he played that in such a way that he created enormous amounts of spin. You've seen the thing hit the green and then rip back. Then he also hit another one, which was a lovely little shot where he controlled, again, low point so well. He hit it off the green.
That's right.
He had to hit one over the corner of the green. So, the types of shots you play are basically how we pick the right sort of sole configuration for you. Okay, so you've got a pretty shallow delivery. You play it nicely from the inside, and it's all very standard stuff. You're not digging it. You're not leaning the shaft forward too much.
And so for that person that does, they definitely want to have enough bounce in a soft condition to have some forgiveness when they're playing.
That's exactly it.
All right, so now we're talking about a firm, very tight lie. Not much underneath.
Nothing.
Basically a bare lie, you call it.
Yeah.
Little to no grass, okay.
And we saw the absolute reverse happen.
Yeah.
So we saw the launch angle never really changed too much on the high bounce wedge, but the spin dropped to about 600.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to guess why that happened. Is that from the higher bounce, almost kind of, to use the term twice, but did it almost kind of bounce into the ball, skip into the ball?
It didn't sound like you were losing control of low point to the point where you were hitting them sort of heavy, but it definitely is what happened.
Yeah, enough that you can measure 600 RPMs on 40 yards is quite a bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So that's, you're not getting quite the same control. You can see the red trajectory being a little bit higher, so you're not getting that kind of low skipper with that one. The interesting thing for me, if I go to how the mid-bounce wedge performed on both.
That is interesting.
That was interesting for me when I saw it was the good all-rounder.
And that's got to be why they designed mid-bounce wedges is you don't know where you're playing exactly. It's probably okay off firm, and it's probably okay off soft.
Very versatile.
Pretty much what it was.
Yeah. So, not changing too much in ball speed. Launch and spin barely changed. We got the same result.
That's very interesting.
Right. And then, we can do the same thing with the high bounce wedge on both turfs, and we can see.
Look at a big disparity there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Launched high every time. That was interesting.
Maybe that's just a function of the center of gravity of this particular wedge or something. But still, the spin numbers were so much different, and that's even more of a clear cut, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the question I asked you was lower launch, more spin with a wedge generally means you've struck it better.
That's
you've made
normally
better
the sign of a really well struck wedge shot is when the launch comes down. Around 30 degrees is what we look for the most part, and obviously keeping the spin nice and high.
So I think a cool test for people, if they don't know, well, first of all, obviously you should try to get fit.
Yeah.
But if you want to self-diagnose a little bit, if you feel like you're making good swings and hitting good shots, but you're not really spinning the ball from, let's say, 30, 40, 50 yards away,
right,
it might be an indication you've got the wrong bounce.
Definitely.
Because
you have the wrong interaction at impact.
Yeah, because there was a bunch of shots that I hit where I thought, those are pretty good, but we were using what you'd consider the wrong wedge for the situation, and the ball just didn't spin as much.
Yeah.
So if you are trying to self-diagnose, that might be a telltale sign that you might need to look at your bounce angle.
Absolutely.
But definitely, you should get fit instead if you can.
If you can, and that's it's always what we preach, isn't it?
Yep.
If you can get out there and have the ability to go to someone who has a bag of wedges or
different bounce angles,
something like that, where you can actually go test it, and golf ball as well.
For sure.
Definitely, we've seen the golf ball as a real key component with the wedges. So. Not to be overlooked. We played the new 2019 TP5
standard. Yep.
Yeah. So it's probably considered a high-ish spinning golf ball.
Should be around the greens, right?
Yeah.
Not the highest, but
middle of the road. It would be interesting to see the same test with a Chrome Soft or something
Kirkland
like that.
Or something,
yeah, we see that change a little bit.
But if someone's playing a firmer golf ball, maybe one without a soft cover, they need to be aware that you're not going to get super high spin no matter what you do. Your technique would have to be so amazing to get away with. What you need is a urethane cover ball, I guess, is what they're called, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
You want to use the premium materials when it comes to the golf ball.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, worth kind of sort of exposing some of these things.
Definitely.
Discussing it, exposing it, testing it, so that you guys can understand why there are different bounces, maybe the values of each one, and.
Definitely.
We're looking at one element of it. The sand is another element.
Definitely.
There's so many other parts. Think of the variations of shots. One of the things I always ask people, what shots do you like to play? We might end up building a scenario where you have a high bounce wedge and a low bounce wedge within your set makeup, so that you can actually have a tool for each scenario.
One might just be a bunker club for someone or something like that.
Well, think of it, if you're playing in a links golf course, and I know back home some of the sand and the native sand in these bunkers is so soft. Like your feet sink into it. So you might want something with a bit more bounce that allows you to play those shots.
Because you'll have a tight lie in the fairway, but then you have a super soft lie in the bunker.
Yeah. So you can again have to cater specifically to what you guys need, and think about your own kind of home conditions where you play the majority of your golf, and the rest is down to skill set.
Yep.
It's kind of being able to be versatile enough within your own skill set to adjust.
Right, and make the best contact based on the turf condition. Okay,
Definitely.
This was really good. So we will be doing grinds next. That'll be the next video in terms of sole design and sole grinds.
Yeah.
And that'll kind of start to give us a little basis for wedge fitting, and then go from there. We got more to do on shafts and other stuff with wedges.
Yeah,
so.
I think we want to do some changing of the flex of the same weighted shaft.
Yeah, got a couple comments on that.
Yeah, I would like to do something where we take an S4 in your case, which we've seen you really like, and go, okay, soft step it once, soft step it twice. So we go wedge shaft, 9-iron shaft, 8-iron shaft.
Oh, okay.
So we're soft stepping it, increasing the length of that tip section, raising that first step a little bit higher, to see if that stuff makes a difference.
Sure.
Is it an internal difference where you feel the difference? Is it an external thing where we can see the difference? We want to make sure that there's some kind of validity to all these sorts of theories.
Absolutely. That's one of the most common questions we got was about flex, so that'll be a good one to do.
Excellent. We're going to try and dig as deep as we can into this, guys. We want to kind of just keep exposing all the tests that we can and giving you guys as many answers as we possibly can. We've all the tools to do it now. We're enjoying having our new matrix, which is growing all the time. We're getting more shafts in. A lot of you were requesting KBS shafts 2.0, the 610 wedge shaft. We've got those coming in.
Good.
So lots more of that to be done in testing.
Good. Look forward to it.
Okay. Guys, hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you again soon.